Sure. Thanks for having me. We can start with the first slide if you like. QEM has got a project up in Julia Creek in Northwest Minerals Province in Northwest Queensland. We've got quite a fascinating resource up here, basically in an oil shale unit. And we will be looking to extract the oil component from that and produce a low sulfur diesel as the objective here. But with that, of course, we have the world's largest inline vanadium resource. We recently had a JORC upgrade, 2.87 billion tonnes of vanadium at 0.31%. That was a 28% increase, and more importantly, 461 million in the indicated category, which again makes us the largest globally and gives us over 100 years of resource access. And to go with that, about 700 million barrels of oil in situ. Now, obviously, we won't be getting all of that, but that is a substantial increase in the 2C category, which we would be able to get into. And we had a maiden 1C category of just a small one of 6.3 million barrels, but we'll look to increase in that on the next drilling campaign. So we've got quite a large resource. Resource is not our issue. It's all about the processing. Next slide, please. We've recently completed a scoping study a couple of weeks ago, and this is the first time we've been able to put any numbers to anything. And if anyone has tried to get a scoping study through the ASX recently, you'll know how highly vetted these things are these days, and for good reason. But we have a very positive project, 1.1 billion post-tax NPV with an 8% discount, IRR of 16.3%, a payback period of 5 years. Now, the pre-production capex we've got in there at 791 million. It's closer to $1 billion with the contingency, owners' costs, EPCM. With a life of mine of about 30 years just in that first mine pit. So we've got an extra couple of locations to the east in the project that we'll look at sometime in the future, but we've actually got enough to go on with 30 years of resource. Annual production outlook is about 5,500 tonnes V2O5. Now we're going for a 99.5% purity, or sorry, a 99.95% purity for V2O5 because our objective is to feed that into the vanadium redox batteries or the vanadium flow batteries, which are required here in Australia to meet the energy transition. And interestingly, with that, we've got about 313 million litres of fuel per year. So that equates to about 860,000 litres per day, which sounds significant, but it's just a touch under 4% of Queensland's requirements for diesel. Diesel consumption in Queensland has gone up 180% over the last decade and continues to move in that direction. So we see it being around for quite some time. The way we describe this, it's globally significant for vanadium. It's only locally significant for fuel distribution. But it will help with those resilience issues that we have at the moment, given that we're importing over 93% of our liquid fuels currently and pretty much 100% of diesel. So that's put us in a little bit of a predicament. If we break that down to OPEX costs, we've got V2O5 just above the lowest production costs, lowest quartile, I should say, of production costs globally, which is around $5. So we're a little bit above that, but those quoted numbers are based on a 98.5% purity. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to a 99.9%. And the fuel around about 59 cents a litre. So that's terminology that people can understand. Next slide, please. And similar to Paul, we have recently put out a renounceable rights issue. Looking at his, it's almost identical by the look of it. Market's quite tight at the moment, but this will allow us to look after some of the shareholders that have been with us on the journey. As you can see, the register is still extremely tightly held. Top 20 is still holding nearly 73% of the company at the moment. So we're looking for a larger spread. But we certainly want to reward those investors that have been with us for the entirety of the journey. So interesting times. We've got a bit of work ahead of us, of course, but as I said, it's more about process. But we have built a pilot plant that extracts the fuel successfully. giving us 180% yield on what it says is in the ground. It's not black magic. It's a supercritical process using a hydrogen donor solvent, which that get too technical, actually expands the hydrocarbon chain. That's how we can get that result. On top of the fact that a modified Fisher assay is a very old way of measuring in situ value of the kerogen resource. So we're doing a raise at the moment to raise 3 million, 2-for-1 renounceable rights issue. Folks can get the details from that, of course, from the ASX or from our website, but I think that's me pretty much out of time, so happy to take any questions.
Gavin, a few questions from the audience. Firstly, can you talk a little bit more about the Australian vanadium market and its long-term potential?
Yeah, sure. Well, particularly here in Australia, we've got a number of different resources for vanadium in Australia. Western Australia, mostly in the magnetite. Up where we are in Queensland, it's a sedimentary deposit from an ancient inland sea. So they're distinctly different. But to answer the question about going forward, I think Australia, and particularly here in Queensland, where they own the grid, they're going to be the consumers of these vanadium flow batteries. They've pretty much decided that is the answer and that's the solution for grid scale support. I think that's been identified in China some time ago. Most of their excess vanadium, ex-steel, of course, is going into vanadium flow batteries. Just announcing another 7 gigawatt hours of storage using vanadium in China. That's a big chunk of the global capacity for vanadium production as it stands at the moment. It's about 125,000 tonnes a year of vanadium metal. If you convert that to V2O5 for batteries, it's about 200,000 tonnes. So 10,000 tonnes of vanadium is required per gigawatt hour of storage. So you can see that's a big chunk of the market. And of course, that's going to drive the future of vanadium. It's all going to be about the batteries. The lowest, assessments by some of the pundits is it's around about a 200% growth, and anywhere north of that, the World Bank just put out some higher figures than that. But for Australia, I think we need these solutions for the grid if we're going to meet the energy transition goals that have been set before us. And vanadium flow batteries are regarded as long duration energy storage over 4 hours. So they're the best solution and suited to the Australian climate.